In the Oklahoman newsroom, you're watching the Press Row. I'm Jenni Carlson here with Barry Tramel. Barry, as we talk on Tuesday morning, the Thunder yet one game to go before they hit the All-Star break, a Thursday night game in Oklahoma City against the Pelicans. But essentially, they're at the All-Star break, and we can now sort of take a minute to look back on this first half of the season. Is there a word that comes to mind when you think about this first half of the season for the Thunder?
Yeah, I guess I'd say frustrating. And some of it's out of their control. I mean, the Thunder's been really good. They're on a 60-win pace. You really can't ask for much more than that. And yet we do because of the Golden State Warriors and the San Antonio Spurs, who are on their own historic pace. So the Thunder, it's frustrating to be this good and yet be so far from what we think is a title. And, the Thunder defense just hit and miss, hit and miss. This week it's been hit and miss. Saturday night at Golden State, you give up 73 in the first half to the Warriors, 43 in the second half. The first is unacceptable. The second is championship level. Yeah. It just sort of drives you nuts.
Yeah, that inconsistency. I agree that. The Thunder's playing overall, when you look at the win-loss record, great basketball. As we've talked, and we've talked not only here, but on our Thunder Thursdays. It's been on the Thunder Buddies podcast. I mean, whatever the forum, you talk about how good this team is playing overall, and yet I think that inconsistency to me is the thing I keep coming back to. It's something that when I think about where this team is trying to get to, I just don't think these below average performances against not great teams are how you build consistency to go into the playoffs. And Barry, we joke a lot about talking about Kendrick Perkins, but a couple years ago, after the team finished out the year, he talked about how you have to develop habits throughout the year if you want to be a champion come April, May, June. And yes, the Thunder is still winning. They're still going to Phoenix and winning. They're still, beating the Magic here at home. But are they really building championship habits? I think that's a big question mark. Can they just flip the switch come the playoffs? And maybe they can, but boy, it sure seems crazy to think a team that allows Victor Oladipo to score 37 on a great shooting percentage is going to miraculously be an elite level team come the playoffs. Is that thinking too much about those building blocks?
No, I think you're right. I think it is asking too much. I don't believe in that flipping the switch. Now, some teams get hot late. Yeah. I mean, we saw the Dallas Mavericks of 2011 were not the best team in the NBA. They were a good, solid team. They got better as the year went on, got good in the playoffs, got hot, got really good, and won the title. That's what the Thunder's got to bank on. Yeah. But that's the kind of thing that doesn't happen very often. Usually the best teams end up showing out in the playoffs too. So the Thunder's going to be competitive. I mean, the Warriors are not sitting there thinking, "Oh, goody, we get to play the Thunder in the playoffs." That's not their mindset. Yeah. I mean, most of them will say, "Holy crap, what are we going to do with Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant?" However, that defensive mentality, it's got to change, and now, it needed to change by now.
Right, and it's not.
We're getting late in the season. We talked about the Golden State game. Monday night at Phoenix, same deal. So, great defense early, then it withered and away it went. So until that changes, you can't get excited about the championship hopes.
Well, and I think about, we've seen that the East is playing better basketball this year, but in the West, you're still talking about, as you mentioned earlier, Barry, Warriors, Spurs, and if you're the Thunder, you're thinking we're going to have to play and win 2 playoff series against those teams that are on historical paces. And I just think if you're not building up those elite team building blocks, if you're not doing those things now, to think you're going to be able to do that consistently enough to survive that kind of difficult stretch, I think the Thunder can beat the Spurs because I think that Spurs nucleus is older. But they're going to extend you. They're going to win some games in a playoff series, and then you got to go try to play the Warriors. I think it's asking a lot. Although I'm curious, after that game on Saturday night against the Warriors, are you more heartened, more disheartened? I mean, what was your takeaway from that game in the Bay?
Well, I was more heartened. I mean, I'm more encouraged than I was before because they did play some shoddy defense that first half, and it was still a game. Still tie game with 3 minutes left. So I think a Thunder Warrior series is going to be epic. I mean, I think it's going to be entertaining. I think it's going to be competitive. I think it's going to be it's not going to be one-sided. I mean, I think it's going to go deep, 6, maybe 7 games. I just think Thunder's going to have a hard time beating the Golden Staters 4 times without elite defense.
Well, and you look at what happened late in that game in the Bay in Oakland. Again, you had an offense go stagnant, not really moving the ball. Westbrook, Durant, again, you're great players. I understand that. They're the ones who are going to get the shots. But if you look at how did Golden State get its shots late? It moved the ball. It moved the ball from player to player. It found the hands of the guys that needed it at the end when you talk about, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, on down the list. But they moved the ball around, and you just saw it stagnate offensively. We talk about problems that creep back up. Late game offense, late game defense in general. I mean, those things just have become repetitive problems. And I think that's who this team is. And can they overcome it? I guess we're going to have to see once April, May, June gets here. Hey, you're watching The Press Row. I'm Jenni here with Barry. We're talking basketball, and so we, of course, have to look at OU and their great run, Barry. It continues. They won their 20th game on Monday night, coming back from the brink of really almost disaster against Texas after that unexpected loss on Saturday at K-State. Now they still have a chance to win that Big 12 championship. Will they?
Well, I think I'm going to predict a tie. How about that? I mean,
why not, right?
I think the Sooners are in great shape. Schedule breaks their way, but they have to go to West Virginia. Yeah. So, I think it's going to be tough to win in Morgantown. So
now West Virginia has to go to Kansas as we speak,
Kansas,
Tuesday night.
Yeah. So I mean, that Kansas game, Sooners don't generally cheer for the Jayhawks in a Big 12 race, but they need some help from the Jayhawks. But the truth is, this Oklahoma team's not playing as well right now as it did earlier. That's not a cause for a big alarm because we see that a lot in college basketball. Team has peaks and valleys, and I think the Sooners are in a valley, and they're fighting through it and with some success, which is always a good thing. I think Jordan Woodard will start shooting better again. I think Ryan Spangler will become more productive. I think Buddy Hield, his efficiency has been dipping. I think it'll rise back up. So I think the Sooners are going to be fine. Yeah. I think they're going to be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. If not, they'll be a 2. I think they'll tie at least for the Big 12 title. If not, they're going to be a game back. It's going to be a great season. They're going to go into March in great shape. And then it becomes shootout. You just, one game, you got to play well, and if you win, you advance. So this whole season is about putting yourself in position, and they're really doing that.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about maybe having a little bit of a lapse right now, the truth is that the Sooner bench, not super deep, but they are getting a few contributions here and there. We see Dante Buford play a big chunk of minutes against Texas on Monday night. So I think they're liking what they're getting out of Buford more and more. It would be helpful if Kadeem Lattin, your favorite Sooner, Barry, could figure out how not to foul.
Don't foul.
He not only is foul prone, but then he gets the technical on Monday night.
Can't do that. Can't do it.
Yeah, that's a big problem. They need Lattin on the floor, but depth is going to be a concern, and I think you're seeing it particularly on the perimeter with a guy like Jordan Woodard. He's kind of having his Isaiah Cousins slump right now, but I think that once you get in the NCAA tournament, if they can sort of maybe survive those first couple games, get the bench out there a little bit because they're going to be so highly favored against probably a 15 or 16 seed in that first round game. And then you kind of have to just start to get your rest where you can. But the thing is, Barry, with all these close games, they know what it takes. They're not afraid of those close games. I think that could come in handy. Could be sort of a silver lining in all of these close games here of late.
Yeah, I mean, I looked through it today. Since New Year's, they're 3-2 in games that literally came down to the last possession with 10 seconds left on the clock. So they are battle-tested, and they're battle-tested with a bunch of seniors who've been battle-tested before this stretch. So Oklahoma is better equipped to handle the pressures of the NCAA tournament more than maybe any team in America. So that's going for them. They got good guard play. They got guys that can distribute the ball around. If Jordan Woodard's off, they got 2 other guys you can count on. We saw that last night. Hield and Cousins came through. So they can withstand an individual's bad shooting night. Now, if they all shoot poorly, they're going home.
Anybody's guess.
But, it's a well-designed team. If my man Big Daddy Lattin can stay on the floor, he can't foul. He cannot foul. That's crippling Oklahoma.
It really is. And, I think about this Oklahoma team. We were talking about Kansas earlier. I think one of the biggest things with Kansas, West Virginia, now those two teams, when we talk about who's going to win the Big 12, it may very well be that those teams are involved with a sharing of the title. Maybe even, if you want to talk about multiple teams sharing the title, who knows? But I think those two teams, while talented and while probably going to be pretty high seeds in the NCAA tournament, I just don't see who their go-to is. And that, to me, separates Oklahoma from not only those two teams when it comes to the NCAA tournament, but a lot of other teams out there, because you know exactly who the ball's going to go to, and it's not just one guy that's exactly who it's going to go to. They could go to Isaiah Cousins, as we saw at that LSU game. Buddy Hield obviously makes the huge shot against Texas. We've seen Jordan Woodard make big shots, Ryan Spangler. I mean, on down the list of guys that can hit big shots. I think that's huge. I don't know how that comes into play in the NCAA tournament, but you at least like to have those options out there come NCAA tournament time. And speaking of the NCAA tournament, you're watching the Press Row. I'm Jenni here with Barry. And Barry, you are getting ready this week to head to Indianapolis to do some mock selections for the NCAA tournament. You're going to sit in the selection room just like that selection committee will for the basketball tournament here in a few weeks and get a chance to experience what that's like. What are you looking forward to most?
I'm looking forward to see how these guys assemble and collect and organize all this information. I went through the football mock selection in October, and frankly, it's a breeze. I mean, it's easy. I mean, you're dealing with seven, 8, 9, 10 teams, and then eventually you got to rank 1 through 25. But who cares who's 17th and who's 24th? In football, just pick the top 4, and that's you can get your arms around it. How do you get your arms around 68-team bracket? How do you get your arms around 120 teams that are in the discussion with potential automatic qualifiers, potential tournament upsets, all those things? How do you keep up with who's in the Colonial tournament, in the Colonial Conference? I mean, to me, it's just an avalanche of information, and I don't know. You know, football is very well organized, and they have all this information ready for you. I don't know how somebody, even if you had people to do it for you, how they can get it to you. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you deal with this unbelievable. I mean, I feel like I'm back in college where I'm going to have to cram. I'm cramming on the way to Indiana just to figure out and make sure I don't look like an idiot and forget that Virginia Commonwealth's in a different conference.
Who's in the Big East these days? I mean, these are tough things. And I think it's going to be really interesting. Something I hope you come back with some information on is just where the Big 12, how it may sort of play out. I mean, obviously around here we're seeing such great basketball on a weekly basis, nightly basis almost, when Big 12 teams get on the floor. And from a personal standpoint, I think there's at least 4 or 5 teams in the Big 12 that are really, really good. But how does that play out? How highly do those teams get seeded? If we were to seed the tournament today, we saw, for example, Barry, Villanova jump to the top of the rankings this week. They have 3 losses, just like Oklahoma, and among those losses is a huge 20-plus point loss to Oklahoma, and yet there's Villanova jumping up while playing in the aforementioned Big East against a steady diet of Marquettes and Providences here of late, but yet they get that spot. How does that all play out? And how, Barry, I think interesting it will be how Oklahoma fares when it comes to those top seeds. Right now, I think they're a 1, but where do they go? Does it matter much? To me, that's going to be really interesting.
It is, and we always, a lot of us put together brackets even before the tournament. We try to schedule people in and put them on the lines and separate the conferences, all that. We actually get to do that this week. How do you determine whether Oklahoma or Kansas goes to Chicago or Louisville? Those kinds of decisions. How do you separate all the Big 12 teams? There's going to be 6 or 7 in the tournament. How do you make sure you keep all those teams apart and keep the bracket balanced? It's just, to me, it's a Rubik's Cube. The football committee has it easy. The basketball guys are the geniuses that have to really think about minute details that you don't have to think about in football.
The truth is, Joe Castiglione picked the wrong committee to get on. He needed to get on that football selection committee.
Yeah, that's right. And what's interesting is Joe doesn't get to vote when Oklahoma's in line for anything. And I think I'm representing Joe, so I don't even get to vote I hope they don't make me leave the room because I don't have anything to do. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because These guys, like I said, the basketball it's literally a jigsaw puzzle.
It is,
and it's just very difficult. You got to be sharp, sort of analytical mind to even be involved in this. Football, you can get an old football coach in there and say, Wisconsin's better than Notre Dame. Let's go have lunch. So it's a big difference.
Well, and I've been around, and I'm sure you have too. Speaking of Joe Castiglione, the Oklahoma athletic director, who this year heads the basketball selection committee, I've been around him to hear some of the logistics that you have to think about. And Barry, it's not just basketball, which I'm interested to see when you come back how this all plays in. It's travel. It's, as you mentioned, making sure conference opponents don't play each other until a certain point. There's just so many logistics.
Brigham Young can't play on Sunday.
Brigham Young can't play on
Which means Brigham Young won't be here.
Sorry.
If you're hoping to see the Cougars down at the Chesapeake, not going to happen this year.
Yeah.
We got Friday, Sunday.
Which, by the way, come back with an idea who's coming here. I want to know.
We're going to put some teams here. I don't know if they'll follow us, but that'll be good.
All right. Hey, you're watching the Press Row. I'm Jenni here with Barry, and after all this basketball talk, let's talk some football. Super Bowl Sunday, it's come and gone. Obviously, those Broncos winning against the Panthers, great defensive performance, but so much of the conversation in the aftermath of the Super Bowl, Barry, has been about Cam Newton. Obviously, a terrible performance by the reigning NFL MVP in that game. Not completing passes, not jumping on a fumble late. He's now said that he was worried about injury, but it is football. Your takeaway on Cam Newton from that game, Barry?
Well, it's a miserable night for Cam Newton, and his stock went down. I don't think it went way down, but definitely, if he's on the stock market, the Cam Newton goes down after Sunday night. And the press conference where he came across as sort of immature.
Petulant?
Yeah, I give him credit. I won't get on him for that. I mean, that's a tough situation. You're sitting there listening to questions that you don't think are very good, and I didn't think they were very good. He didn't want to answer them. He gets up and walked out. Okay, who cares? He has a bad game against the Denver defense.
So do a lot of quarterbacks.
I can't. Tom Brady scored 12 points. Yeah. They scored 12, I think. New England, whatever they got.
Yeah.
I mean, the Patriots didn't do anything with that Denver defense. However, when the ball's on the ground and you're a 245-pound quarterback who runs into linebackers in the open field, and the game's on the line with
in the
2
fourth
minutes,
quarter of the Super Bowl, Barry,
you got to get on the ball.
Yeah.
And this idea of I didn't want to get injured. For what? You didn't want to hurt your golf game in the month of March? I mean, you got 6 months to recover if something does happen. You got to get on the football.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a guy out there a teammate playing with a broken arm. Jared Allen had a broken foot. Thomas Davis, broken arm. Thomas Davis had no business.
Peyton Manning jumped on a football earlier in the game.
Peyton Manning jumps on a football, and he's more brittle than an Oklahoma tree. So, that was a bad look for Cam Newton. And I think it hurts his stock. It's not something he can't recover from.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a bad look.
Yeah, and the post-game press conference is going to leave a lot of people sour. There's a lot of people who were sour on Cam Newton before, and I think that was just added fuel to the fire. Now, it's come out that the setup for the press conference was not ideal. It sounds like essentially Cam Newton is on one side of a curtain, and on the other side of a curtain is Chris Harris, the Bixby product who went to Kansas, fantastic secondary player for the Broncos, who's asked about what they did against Cam Newton. Of course he is. And he basically is talking about how they manhandled Cam Newton. And Cam Newton apparently can hear Chris Harris talking about him. So the NFL, I can't believe that in a billion-dollar industry like the NFL, at their biggest game, they've got a curtain separating two guys that have been essentially going at each other virtually for 2 weeks and actually for 3 or 4 hours before, and they've got them separated by a curtain, Barry? The NFL can't do better than that?
Well,
it's terrible.
I mean, I've been to, I think, 3 Super Bowls, and it's similar to what I saw in New York 2 years ago, which is, it's very exactly what I saw. I mean, it's just, Patriots were on one side, Seahawks were on one side, Broncos on another, and it was basically a curtain partition between the two. I think that's overstated in terms of being able to hear. If you're hearing Chris Harris talk, there's people in your room, on your side, Panthers, and on the other side, Broncos, all kinds of people talking. So
and being amplified through microphones too.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're hearing Chris Harris talk about you in particular, you've got rabbit ears. You're trying to listen to him. So it's possible that did happen. It's possible that did upset him. That's no excuse. I think Cam Newton needs to hang on to this was a bunch of bad questions. I'd vote for him on that one.
That may very well be. Now, the thing that Cam Newton is going to have to, I think, maybe grow into, and, I get that he's still young and he is going to experience things that improve him for the future, but he's not only a face for the Panthers, he's a face for the NFL now. As the reigning MVP, he's now part of that machine that promotes the NFL. And for him to not put on a little bit more of a mature face at the end of that game, I get he was disappointed. I get that the questions may not have been, up to the standard that you would like, but he has to be aware of that, and surely that's going to be a learning experience for him on a lot of levels. I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of that improve moving forward. Barry, a lot's been made of the fact that I believe after the 2010 Super Bowl, Peyton Manning didn't stick around to shake hands on the field after his team lost. It wasn't the best show of sportsmanship. And I think he probably learned from that. I assume Cam Newton will learn from this, because there's a lot more years of Cam Newton coming. He's not going away. He plays fantastically. He'll be back. His team will be back. So don't be surprised to see him learn from this. But if he learned anything, surely somebody along the line is going to show him that replay of that fumble and say, you got to get on the ball here, Cam.
Get on the ball.
Get on the ball. Hey, be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.